Hey folks, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another video. Today we are in Cornwall and we're going to have a little walk around Charlestown, see what it's got to offer. It's quite a famous village. First thing I've got to say is the parking can be quite expensive in Cornwall, but if you do a little bit of research you can suss out free parking spots. We've just parked on the road down to Charlestown and it's free all the way along there, as long as you avoid the double yellow lines. Save yourself a few quid. Be prepared to have a little walk down, which means a walk back up. It's better than paying the parking. Well, it's just dropped down towards the harbour bit, and as you can see there's a few boats in. It's a very famous bit of harbour. It's been in quite a few films, notably Poldark and the Oneiden line, if you're old enough to remember that. The recorded history of Charlestown can be traced back to at least the mid-14th century. Historical records from 1354 identified the settlement as being called Port Muir, which is derived from the Cornish words Porth, meaning cove, and Muir, meaning great. There wasn't much to Porthmuir besides a few very humble dwellings and a small fishing fleet. However, with the expansion of nearby St Austell, the bay became an increasingly popular spot where cargo could be loaded and unloaded from the beach. The potential for developing this into a harbour for the booming tin, copper and china clay industries was first seen by Charles Rashley, who was a local lawyer, investor and entrepreneur. He bought land near the village and started building a grand house for himself. That's what happens to naughty assistants. An example here of some boats that were built here in Charlestown Harbour for the TV film series Hornblower, and have since featured in other series such as Poldark, Taboo and Amonite. And they're a replica of an 18th century boat which was generally used for carrying goods and people to shore from ships out in the bay. In 1791, Charles Rashley began building the harbour, and within 10 years he had transformed this small coastal settlement into a bustling port, and it was renamed Charlestown. Have you seen the doves there behind me? So, during the filming of Mansfield Park in 1999, the film crew released a flock of doves for a dramatic scene, and they're still here today. Thriving on the imports of coal, timber and lime, and the export of copper ore and china clay, Charlestown supported shipwrights, rope makers, blacksmiths and chandlers, and also a pilchard fishing fleet. While his port continued to thrive, the personal fortunes of Charles Rashley took a turn for the worse. He was embezzled by two of his employees and died in 1823 bankrupt. This chute I'm stood under was built for loading clay onto ships and meant that the east side of the village was covered in a white dust due to the high levels of dust produced from the clay mines in nearby St Austell. St Austell itself was once known as the White City. The last shipments of china clay left Charlestown Harbour in 1999. I have to say, I do like the claret and blue tender that's on the side of there, up the villa. The Lovering clay dry located above the village is the only surviving china clay dry in the world directly linked to a harbour via a tunnel. Behind the four black doors were the clay cellars. China clay was loaded into these cellars through trapdoors on the Quay Road, the earliest of which would have been made from granite in 4 bays, with 3 later reinforced concrete bays adjoining to the south. There's lots of barrels dotted around the place, and barrels like this have been used for storage and shipping goods for centuries, tapered at both ends to make them easier when you're rolling them along. Charlestown itself had several cooperages, cooperage being a place where barrels are made, and supplied the barrels for the port. Got the Sea Lion over there, and you can actually stay on board that. It's an Airbnb, which apparently sleeps 8 people. Little look at the outer bit of the harbour there. Beautiful little entrance, and you can just imagine it bustling back in the day with ships coming in, port workers, barrels being rolled up and down the quay. Get them images in your mind. The harbour itself is privately owned and is a World Heritage Site.
This unusual octagonal building is the former harbour master's hut and was built around 1885. It has 4 pane sash windows on 7 sides and a 4-panel door facing landwards on the 8th.
Just drop down to the outer part here of the entrance to the harbour. Drop down out of the wind, which is nice. The colour of the water is absolutely gorgeous at the moment. Got a few people fishing off the top there, so I imagine that'll be nice. I imagine there's plenty of fish about. Just up towards the pier house there, you can see a couple of gigs up the top of the slipway. They were used all over the coast for pilots to row out, guide boats into places like this. And obviously if there was more than one gig, the quickest gig to get to the boat would get the job. And that's actually where gig racing comes from. Got the slipway behind me there for launching gigs and smaller boats, and it looks a pretty steep one to me. I wouldn't fancy hauling it back up.
After walking around this beautiful harbour, taking in the sights and passing my favourite place, we decided to visit the museum. Filled with lots of interesting finds, artefacts and treasure, we really enjoyed looking around this museum and recommend anyone to visit if they're in the area. with lots of information about what was on display. It was extremely interesting seeing everything that was there. And they even had a Kim-sized cannon.
Don't forget, ring that bell and you'll be notified of upcoming videos.
We even got to walk down the tunnels where the china clay would have been transported down to the chute that we saw earlier in the video.
Well, we've just ducked into this little park area off the main road. We walked back up the hill to where we parked the car. That's why we're huffing and puffing a bit. I hope you've enjoyed that little glimpse of Charlestown here in Cornwall. Very, very interesting seeing the museum and everything, wasn't it? And very nice little village to walk around and see where some of these famous films were filmed. If you have enjoyed it, you do know what to do. Give us a big thumbs up, click subscribe, tickle the notification bell so you can see when we're putting the next video out. And if you are interested in seeing this area of Cornwall, then you can check out one of the videos coming up on your screen now, and we'll see you over there. Say goodbye, Kim.
Goodbye, Kim.
Goodbye, Kim.